What's the one piece of advice you give to our listeners?
Keep pushing boundaries. Never be happy with where you are, the skill set you've got, and just keep pushing boundaries. But at the same time, never let go of what got you there, the principles that got you there, whatever those principles might be, those foundations. Keep close to those foundations. Do not let go of those foundations. And again, maybe I'm talking a little bit general here, but that's just the way
it's pushing.
Exactly.
It's pushing yourself.
Exactly. Push yourself, but keep those strong foundations. I mean, it's hard work ethic.
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. The one favor I would ask, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello, and welcome back to Alchemy Uncensored podcast. We're on our third season, and we promise you that we'll bring in more valuable insights into the financial and tax sector of the UAE. Today, backed by popular demand, we're recording a follow-up chat with Ralph Khoury, international renowned CFO, finance leadership advocate, and crisis financial officer. As labelled by CFO Magazine Australia, given the various crises he has had to manage businesses through over many years in the Middle East, Europe, Asia and Australia. Ralph currently leads the financial relationship with Omnicom's key client Nissan. But I see that you're also on the Ethics and Governance Centre of Excellence at CPA Australia, on the Financial Committee at the American School of Dubai, and you're in-demand speaker at events and podcasts across the Middle East and beyond. In the depths of COVID-19, you also co-founded the e-commerce female activewear brand CNS Active. And more recently, you also co-launched a wellness and recovery business in Sydney called RE5. How do you do it? That's the big question, Ralph. How are you? Good to have you back.
Really good to be back, actually.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It has been, yeah.
But we've been in contact.
We have.
Yeah, we've been touching base at different events.
Yeah.
You're always doing something different.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, Ralph.
But no, it's been interesting. It's been probably a year now since we spoke last, and I think a lot has happened over the past 12 months. A lot of change, obviously, in the region we operate in. A lot of business activity. Me personally, I've been pulled in a number of different directions. Professionally, I'm very happy. I'm working on a very large piece of business for my employer, Omnicom. And yeah, it's been an interesting challenge, because when the clients have challenges, those challenges become your challenges, and they kind of need to go that extra mile to try and fix them.
Good. Yeah. Well, look, thanks again for coming back. And I know in our first chat, I think when we finished it, there was definitely so much more that we could talk about. So today we're going to take obviously more of a different slant and everything, and cover some of the areas, because as you said, you're very out there in the public eye. You speak at a lot of events. You had a few of my events where you've spoken very well too. So I think there is a lot of value you can add for our listeners who are job seekers, but also people who are in leadership positions, as you've seen quite a lot in your career thus far. I guess where we'd like to kick off then is just financial leadership, all that side of things. What's your view on that? And for our listeners who want to get to that next level, what should they be doing?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, actually. A lot of younger guys, mid-level guys, they come to me and they say, look, what advice can you give? They're well educated, they've got their degree, they've got their masters, but they kind of struggle to really demonstrate leadership in a way that's appreciated across other leadership roles in an organization, or basically in any employers that they're targeting. So here they kind of need to think about the additional skill sets. What additional skill sets can I have, and where am I weak, and work on that. So if you're not good at managing teams, well, you need to get better at that. If you're not comfortable speaking in a public situation, then you need to get better at that. If you can't read the financials in a way that a non-financial leader understands, then you need to address that. You got to tell that story. Nobody wants to look at spreadsheets. Nobody gives a damn about debits and credits. You've got to give a damn about debits and credits.
Correct.
That's your job. It's what you get paid for. But to tell the story behind what's happened and why it's happened, that requires you to really understand the business that you're operating in, and being able to explain the changes in the financials that result from business decisions that are taken or are about to be taken. Yeah, I think this is the key. And if you can kind of master that, you can then have a true voice, let's say, at the table, and then you can rally the troops, your teams around that. You go down the path then of building a persona of a leader who understands not only the finance principles, but how they interplay and work with the business that you're leading or driving or reviewing. If you're an auditor, it depends what it is. Yeah.
And so with that, then just pushing more into it, for someone who's out there, they love their spreadsheets, but as you said, with automation coming in, AI, this is the hot topic. And from speaking to people like yourself, for up and coming talent, if you're going to have AI that's going to make a report that takes maybe 3 hours to take 10 minutes, it's obviously going to free up time for you. And this is the chicken egg situation where the Gen Z or the up and coming, guys coming through the ranks, where if there's such a demand to work from home, all this side of things where they're not building relationships within the company. Because for me, and again, you'll know better than this, the biggest gap I can see for these people is managing teams. Because if a company is going to become more efficient, but then this generation don't want to have the human element in the job, that's where I can see challenges probably coming down the line for people that need to be more confident. Because I know you've two daughters, but do people pick up the phone? I'm not sure. Everyone just seems to text these days. There's not that mentality. Just pick up the phone, get what you want. So this is something I see coming around the corner.
Yeah. No, that personal touch is missing, definitely. All you're used to is working from home. It's very difficult to build those relationships. You need to build those relationships and have those casual conversations in order to just go one step deeper. You can't always do that on a Teams call. Okay, so the people that go that extra mile and perhaps go out of their way to have that personal connection, either at an event or at a coffee shop or even in the office, even though you don't have to be there, I think you will gain something truly additional, which you can't get just sitting and chatting through a text. Yeah. I mean, today, for example, you messaged me about a coffee, and I wasn't sure whether or not we were going to meet for coffee or whether you were. And these are the sorts of things that can happen every day. Yeah, the miscommunication over a text.
Yeah, and that's actually I had an issue with one of my team during the week where a text was probably taken out of context what I was trying to get to. Yeah. While if what we both actually said in hindsight is that if we had met in person or even had a phone call, you'd be able to pick up from the tone of the conversation what the meaning of what I was trying to get across. And I'll hold my hands up, it was my fault. But the reality is, as you said, because it was in text, you don't know how the other person is receiving that text. It's the same for emails that can come out. They can be viewed passive aggressive or however you want to see it. But that's why the face-to-face interaction. And again, this is the thing which I remember when I was an auditor, I was quite good in the office at building relationships, and it probably got me away with a lot of my poor work, I would say. While if it was a remote job where it is transactional and you are viewed on just get that work done and you're cut, where you're never going to have anyone who is your cheerleader when you're not in the room. I'm sure you've been in many boardrooms where a staff member has talked about, and if someone in the room isn't backing that person up, then they're in trouble.
They are. But you're an auditor, so once an auditor, always an auditor.
I think I'll go on the record that says KPMG will probably say I was the worst auditor they ever had in their ranks. But I learned something. But I think then pushing on from that, now the fact that we're talking about the Gen Z or the up and coming talent, mentoring. I imagine you probably had a lot of good mentors in your life, and I imagine you're giving a lot of mentorship to people these days. So, what's your view on that?
It's important that you, in the same way you were mentored when you were younger, that you make an effort to mentor people who approach you. People, they don't need much. They just need a helping hand. They need some advice. They need some guidance. They need someone who they can trust, and in that safe place. And often the workplace may not be the safe place for them to get that. So they look for someone who perhaps they aspire to, they followed their career, they've heard them, they've listened to them. It's funny, I speak at some events and then I get emails from people afterwards who I don't know. But they talk like they actually really, really know you because they've kind of studied everything. And then they're asking you for input on their situation, which is really hard to do. So you kind of need to be a little bit cautious not to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But obviously people that you do know, there is an important role to play. And I feel that I've played that role with a lot of finance executives throughout their career, and they've kind of gone up, step by step through some advice, through coaching. They come and ask me, how should I handle this situation? And honestly, the principles I share, I think have helped them and have helped them be carried, further in their careers. So I feel good about that, actually.
Good. What are the sort of common things which, people that you do mentor, what are the challenges that you're sort of seeing?
Yeah. It's generally pressures of the role. I mean, how do you react when you're asked to do something and you're not 100% in line with that? How do you present an alternative point of view on a topic, on a request? How do you handle sensitive issues? Conflict management is always something that comes up. How do you handle passing on bad news? We like to share good news, but sometimes, unfortunately, we need to be honest and share some challenging news. And again, there are ways to do that. There are ways to bring everybody back into a grounded form and say, look, this is the reality of the situation, and being kind of brutally honest, but in a way that are the right people in the room, is it the right time? We need to think about all these points.
It's funny you say that because in recruitment, and it's probably, we spoke about this as well just before, like one of the biggest pain points for candidates is when they go through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews and they get ghosted by the recruiter, in particular, the middle person. And sometimes, look, for recruiters, we just haven't got the feedback. We're stuck in the middle. But there is times as well where a recruiter will just focus on the guy who's going to make them the money. Yeah. This is the preferred candidate. I'll deal with B, C, D down the line. And it's a very interesting thing where I remember when I was more actively recruiting, where you used to be so nervous about giving bad news to a candidate, like someone you've built a relationship with up. They respect you, you respect them, and you really just, it's the thing that's hanging over you. You know you need to do it. But the funny thing is that once you do it, they're so happy you've told them. Yeah. Like the amount of, and again, I haven't done it in a while, but when you tell a candidate, look, you haven't got it, they're actually, and the reason why they are so happy is because it's off there, that their anxiety's gone about wondering, is it there, is it not there? But obviously there's, probably a culture where they just don't hear. So, and I tell my team that this is going to make you look so good if you just literally pick up the phone and share the information. And it's just getting into a habit of doing it. As I'm sure you must be pretty used to giving bad news. Hopefully it's not that often, but you're comfortable doing and know the right mechanics to go about it, I guess. Yeah.
The relief of the other person, right? Yeah. So again, going back to the candidate situation, I mean, they've got a lot of hope built up. Now they realize that, okay, then this is off the table. There's a bit of disappointment, but there's a little bit of relief that they kind of know now, and they can kind of move forward.
The closest thing I would say is like, if you're in an enforced situation where you're waiting on a doctor to call you, every day you're waiting, and then you finally get the call. Hopefully the news is good, but that's the sort of anxiety I think that will build up. So
the same thing with a finance leader. I mean, getting it off your chest, making sure people are aware of the situation, the consequences, because again, you make decisions, business decisions all the time, but have we really thought out all the elements, all the impacts of those decisions? It could be a funding issue, it could be a resource issue, making sure that all those aspects have been thought of, and no one's thinking about what's happening on the balance sheet. We make decisions every day, but you need to think about, okay, how does that affect my balance sheet? Because at the end of the quarter, when people look at the numbers, right, and they say, okay, but what's happened here? Well, we did A, B, or C. You know what I mean? And I think correlating always a decision with its financial impact puts everybody on the right page, and then you kind of end up making sure people understand exactly the impact of those decisions, right, wrong, or indifferent.
The storytelling seems to be a key aspect here. And if I'm an FM or an FC, now, what should I be saying to my boss? Is a case, let me sort of take ownership of telling you the story of, because you're trying to obviously explain it to the sales guy, the MD, or whoever it is on the team. But is it a case just get out there, speak, make mistakes, and just, is it as simple as that?
There's a learning curve. Most financial leaders, non-financial leaders, sorry, they know the story. They know their business. That's why they are there. They are the best in the organization. That's why they've made it to those roles. So your role is to basically leverage the information they have and connect the dots to the financial outcomes that have resulted in the month or the week or even the plan that you've got out there. So if you see that there is a massive investment in a new market with a new product, then that has an impact. That has an impact maybe on funding. It could have an impact on the P&L, on the requirement to resource. So when those numbers are presented, that story should be very, very clear. It should be consistent, right? You can't have a situation where you're investing and there's no impact on funding. Either there's an internal source of funding or an external source of funding. Same thing with expansion. If you haven't got the right resource level, then are you expanding? I mean, it's not accounted for. So connecting the dots with the financial metrics and the business decisions is the story that you need to master, no matter which role, no matter which industry, no matter which geography.
Yeah, look, I think it's anything. It's just getting the reps in is the biggest thing. Like even me doing the pod or even our CFO breakfast. I remember the first one we did, I was actually quite nervous. I was like, never done this before. And now if we do another one, you completely get it. So I think the lesson here is that just throw yourself into it. And, you got to remember, if you as a CFO see the guy underneath you making the effort, you're going to understand they're making the effort and, let them make mistakes to an extent, because these guys are on that journey from that side. But now to put it back on you a little bit, obviously you mentioned you've had mentors and look, you come across very calm, very professional, you've done very well in your career. But when you were an FM or an FC or that aspiring guy, what were the areas which you felt you had to improve?
Actually, about getting areas of improvement, but just getting the raw truth, being critiqued. Again, today, the younger generation are a little bit sensitive about being critiqued. And I think that's a little bit something they need to address, right?
Well, I think on that as well, because I personally think the whole mindset of people today is that, give everyone a medal because they've participated. It's,
Correct.
It's not creating that win-win environment.
So being brutally honest, and again, having that safe place where the mentor says, look, you did this right, this is good, but you know what, this is an area where you need to kind of work on, you need to address. I remember years ago, I was very interested in the area of negotiation, because I really felt negotiation was going to be an important skill set that I needed to do. So there was this big push on negotiation and the like. So I said, you know what, I want to go on a course. And it was an external course, and it was one of the universities in Australia. So I went on the course. I spent 3 or 4 days, and I came back, and then 2 weeks they said, okay, so what did you learn? You know what I mean? So you almost, when you do that, you kind of then need to immediately demonstrate what you've learned on the job in real time. So this is the sort of thing you need when it comes to mentoring, and it's a safe place. If you're being mentored, you need to feel that you can be very open about these things and potentially look lousy at doing it. So that's the sort of mentoring that you kind of need. Now, when you think about the next role that you want, for example, how do I position myself to secure that next role? What do I need to do? Who do I need to engage with? Do I need to invest time in building a skill set? I mean, you spoke about AI. Is that something that's going to get me a capability, that is missing today and differentiate me from other candidates? I remember, and just before COVID, Power BI was something which that's the buzzword, yeah. Exactly. So moving away from spreadsheets, let's have a dashboard. Dashboards were all the rage. So I said, the same thing. I asked one of the guys in my team to go on a course, but I said to him, don't come back and show me anything until you're ready. But when they did show me, it was incredible, because all of a sudden all the metrics were followed on a mobile phone, on an iPad, and we've moved away from the spreadsheets that look, pretty nasty, on a good day.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the CEOs, the business leaders are looking at those numbers in a different way, in a way that they don't have to sort of search for the key number. The key number's there. And it's red or it's green, and it's so
green is better.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, that's good. And then because we're recruiting a role at the moment, mid-level role, and the hiring manager, all he's saying, just they need to know about they not that they need to know everything about AI, but they need to be prepared, want to know about it, because in their industry there's a lot of automation potential. So I think getting that skill set up there, I think, is pretty important these days. But like there is so many things people can focus on. But I think the biggest thing it is, from what I can see, it is confidence, and actually, as you said, from a mentor side of things. And I think what the Gen Z needs to be seen is that you need to, sometimes in life it's not what you want to hear, it's what you need to hear.
Exactly.
And that culture, I think, needs to maybe not come back in, but yeah, that's probably just the issues I can foresee from speaking to people, because even now when we speak with the more junior candidates or younger candidates, there's a lot more questions on this, that, which some elements are definitely fair, but then wanting to have remote work from day one is like, you need to prove yourself. You can't just get that straight away.
List of demands.
There is. A list of. But it's interesting. Like, it's like the shift here is now. It's money's obviously important. Don't get me wrong. People look at a salary, they want X, but we've seen people decline higher salaries just because of other, no flexibility and other sides of things. Like even just getting away for a few weeks in the summer, little things that. So I think we're at a crossroads with some of the clients, some of the companies in Dubai anyway, that if they want to get the best talent, their brand now or salary is not just going to guarantee you to get them.
Yeah, it needs to be the full spectrum of benefits. Flexibility is something people are looking for now. They want flexibility. They want that balance with their own life, which again, when I was younger, we didn't have. I remember I worked on a pitch, and I'm going back now to the early 90s. It was such an important pitch that basically I had to sign up to be involved for 2 straight months, and I was only allowed to go home to sleep. Everything else, all meals, were in the office, and it was so secretive that there were all these windows, I remember, around us. And one morning I came in, and there was brown paper that was sticky taped across all the windows, because what we were working on was so sensitive and so important. They didn't want anyone to know what it was.
How did the pitch go?
Actually, we didn't get it. We didn't get it. But it was the experience of working with such a close group of people over 2 months, eating every day, having coffee, exchanging stories, bouncing ideas off, which meant that you had a friend for life, effectively, because everybody was going through the same thing. That was hard work. That was they were 18-hour days, 19-hour days for 2 straight months, weekends included. So that powers you up.
That toughens you up, all right.
Exactly. So I don't know. I mean, again, if today we're going to start our career by being very selective in the effort that we want to put in, and it has to be well balanced, and we're not prepared really to go beyond that, but we still want be paid at par. We don't want to travel too far because the traffic is not working.
Work 4 days.
Exactly,
and
these sorts of things, and we only want to work with companies that are in certain segments because we don't like the other segments and whatever. You're really limiting yourself, and I think you're not really starting your career with the right mindset for sustainable success, let's call it, for want of a better word.
I need to get a spoon, go to a big thing of cement and harden up is probably the best way of putting it. And then just touching that transformation. Yeah. It's finance transformation, digital transformation, but personal, professional transformation. Yeah. Again, this is in such a changing. The next 5-10 years for finance, for accountants, is going to change. the way people are talking about it's going to change so much. So what's your view on that?
Transformation is constant, definitely. And for finance executives, leaders, they always need to be looking at ways to transform themselves, transform their organizations. I can talk a little bit about my own personal transformations. As I've moved from career to career or market to market, it always involves a transformation of understanding a new culture, a new way of doing things. With technology coming along, obviously we've spoken a little bit about AI. How do you embrace AI and deliver exceptional value for the organization that you're in? I mean, don't push it away. Embrace it. How do you bring it in? How do you start with certain use? What do you do with that? How do you demonstrate its use? How do you show its true value? I mean, if you don't do that, you're going to fall behind. How do you engage with the ecosystem that you're working in? You know, being again seen as a thought leader. That's an important part of transforming. How do you secure the best talent? And again, you're in the talent business, so you know how important that is, having the right teams and having a constant transformation of teams. I mean, many organizations say every year you've got to sort of shed your lowest 5 or 10%, performers. I think that's something that you've got to constantly do if you want to have a high performance team. And as a finance leader, how best to show transformation without constantly injecting top talent with new skill sets, different industries, younger people that perhaps embrace technology. You know what I mean? The younger guys are more ready to embrace technology quicker. You know, they'll go and spend 2 weeks on it, and then they'll come and, master it. Video games, you've seen them with video games, it's the same sort of thing. And then, of course, transforming organizations and the role of finance there in connecting the dots between operations, the business, the leadership, following through, making sure you've got accountability in an organization when it comes to transformation. Who's accountable for what? Because how do you transform without accountability?
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing, especially in this part of the world, everyone loves the idea of transformation. Yeah. Probably that's what's been seen in Saudi recently, where they've, the consulting gigs aren't as lucrative as they used to be. That these guys love the idea of all these big changes, but ultimately when it comes down to it, the change didn't happen for a lot of companies.
Nothing, exactly. And they pay a lot of money, and everything's still the same. So transformation, it's not. I've seen cases where companies are putting a new ERP system. Put in a new ERP system, but you didn't change the processes around the ERP system. And you're not benefiting then from the full effect of a transformation. You've got to change the way you work. You've got to change the processes around in order to fully secure the value of a transformation. If all you do is just take out an old system, put a new one in. So I think going further, being ready to transform all parts of the organization, all departments, whether it be HR, obviously finance, operations, sales. If you're an engineering company, the way you build your products, all of these organizations, you cannot have a part of the organization that sort of holds on to the past. It just doesn't work.
And then, one compliment I will give you, Ralph, is that there's not many people who are as active for personal branding, I would say, from finance leadership side that I've seen on LinkedIn. I think you're very good. We do a lot ourselves, obviously, but we're in different spheres. So it's becoming so much more common now. I can see a lot of people setting up businesses, trying to help personal branding, because, LinkedIn is the Instagram or Facebook, whatever you want to call it, for business people. For you, being authentic, for people that are aspiring to maybe be more active on LinkedIn, getting their name out there, because I think, as you were saying just beforehand, where people are, when you could do an event, people come to you obviously don't know them, but they've seen your branding on LinkedIn. So just keen to get your thoughts, because it is something that we're seeing a lot more candidates coming to us about. Now people are looking for roles or coming into the region, how they can make themselves more seen, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slow burn, let's say, because I think firstly you need to have something to say, right? And if you don't have anything to say, it's really hard to sort of kickstart. But having something to say, and when we sit together, we talk and we kind of know each other quite well. When you read what I post on LinkedIn, it's the same guy talking. How often do you see you sit with someone and then you read their post and you're 100% sure they haven't written that?
Yeah. No, I can agree. Well, I'm dyslexic, so if anyone sees a very clean looking post from my side, they're exactly. ChatGPT's done that.
Exactly. So ultimately, this is why I say you really need to be authentic, and you need to be sharing insights, an experience, a story, which attracts someone to A, want to read it, and B, want to comment about it, and perhaps then someone who'd write to you directly and ask you for advice or input or want to meet you or whatever. So I think more and more, this is an important way to build another dimension to your profile, let's say. Again, keep in mind that today technology is all around us and people love to watch videos and people are spending a lot of time on social media. So getting that 10, 15, 20-second clip in front of them and perhaps sharing an ideal, a point, an insight, which they can connect with is extremely valuable, and it stays in their mind for a very long time. Yeah. So when they do meet you, they almost just talk to you about something, and you probably have forgotten about it. But it's something very, very powerful. So people should do it. I mean, if you're a finance person, finance leader who is looking to differentiate yourself, right? Be clear on what you want to talk about, what your position is. I speak a lot about things that I'm passionate about, right? And when I go and speak at events, I'm speaking the same topics: the role of the CFO, role of finance leaders. How do you become a CFO? Governance and ethics, very, very important. Always these days, many often forgotten and left behind. Procurement. How do you work with procurement? Commercial negotiation.
Challenging.
Exactly. Crisis management. Financial leadership in crisis management. These are topics that I'm going to present with a passion. I'm presenting because I've experienced them. I'm talking about my own stories over the years, and I find them very impactful because if you do want to succeed, if you do want to get ahead, if you leverage a few of these, you'll be in a better place. That's how I really approach it. Yeah.
As you said, your LinkedIn, a lot of it is follow-ups from events you've done, you've spoken. So public speaking itself, that is this something that naturally came to you?
Yeah. Look, no, it didn't naturally come, but again, you have to go at it. Now, I've been lucky that I've worked in a great organization where I've seen over the years some amazing speakers, and I watched them and I was excited by what I heard and the techniques that they used. So what I sort of did was I sort of said, maybe I can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and practice a little bit at home, and then try one. There is one on YouTube actually that I hated and it didn't matter. Right, I threw myself in there. I did get some positive feedback, but when you self-critique, you kind of think, man, that wasn't good. I could have done better.
The thing is, what I've learned, and you're your own biggest critic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. You'll see things which other people don't see. You'll always see the negatives. Well, people will always want to see you do well. So
then the beauty of it is you go again. But then you go again and you've practiced and you've done better, and then you're focusing your talk again on something and master. So when I go and present, and again, I'm not trying to sound like I've got an ego or anything, but you need to almost think this topic better than anyone else in the room.
Yeah. I think it's actually it's the minute or the minutes leading up to actually starting that's the worst.
Yeah.
Because once you're in it, it's like anything. Even when you're playing, if you're playing a big football, rugby match, whatever, the butterflies you get, and then once you're actually out on the pitch and the ball gets thrown up or whatever, everything goes.
Yeah. And you see people, right, and they're fixated, right? They're watching you, and you look around and you talk, and I pause, and you make eye contact with people, and you just keep moving around. And actually, the moving around came naturally. When I do speak, I don't stand in one spot. I actually walk up and down, and I walk around. And sometimes I go into the crowd. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever
That's
comes.
When you got the confidence.
Exactly.
When you're straight.
No, exactly. But it's and I don't know how that happened. It just sort of flowed.
But it's natural. But for me, my career now, it's just repetition, and it is that whatever you want to call it, who's in your head that's telling you can't do it, that, and that noise just goes down. I think when you try anything for the first time, and that's what I'd say for any, especially listeners who have an idea, just what's the worst can go wrong? Like you have to make mistakes. That's the only way you'll actually grow.
Yeah, you'll be your own biggest critic, but there'll be people that appreciate that you've gone out of your way to do it. You spent your time, you've imparted some knowledge, and ultimately, you know, I mean, they walk away, you know, thinking better of you, more positively of you. So you can't lose. So if you are given an opportunity to speak, take it.
Yeah. 100%, yeah. Just, and worry about it later.
Exactly. Don't be afraid of the scenario. You know, you've got to kind of fall to pick yourself up, learn from, you know, where you fell down, get rid of those nerves, and
because even we've a lady Rudika on our team, and she's covers our tax recruitment, and she was asked to go on, I think, Dubai Eye last year at one point for a live, and she was so nervous. It was only a 5-7 minute slot, and she's a lovely lady, you know, quite introverted, but she was so nervous before going on, and I can imagine she was practicing all night to get it all done, and then she smashed it. Yeah. And then she came out, and she goes 10 seconds in, everything flushed out.
Yeah, because you know, if you know your stuff, you just fall back onto the information you've got, you know, here, and it's just then about articulating it.
Yeah,
and if you can do that well, then I think, you know, you'd be a hit.
To close on the our chat properly, we have to mention, which is probably the most topical country in the world, well, definitely in the Middle East at the moment, is Saudi. So I've seen, obviously, you've spoken a lot of you know, Saudi events, etc. in the last while. How is everything over there?
Fabulous. Actually, it's grown exponentially over the past 2 years, let's say. I've been traveling to Saudi Arabia for nearly 17 years.
17,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So when no one was traveling to...
You were probably the only man on that flight back in the day.
There were people, but I think it wasn't as open, and I think that, you know, they've done an amazing job in attracting business, FDI, tourism, and all of that. And ultimately, you know, in order to develop the industries they've got there, they need finance, good quality finance people. The infrastructure is still coming along. Clearly, I mean, there's a lot that they need to build out, and they've sort of committed to do things in a very short space of time. But it's happening. It is happening. I mean, that's for sure. I think I spoke at a couple of events. I chaired a round table, was an important part of a fitness industry event. And again, if you think about, you know, an industry like that coming from nowhere to wanting to put in place hundreds of gyms and having that infrastructure and changing the sentiment around wellness in general, where, you know, historically they've had a lot of issues with obesity and these sorts of things. So the transformation they're going through is across all aspects of society. So hats off, I think.
Seen a change, obviously, as I said, 17 years.
Correct.
I imagine when you hop into or land into Riyadh now compared to...
Very different. Obviously, the airport's different, but everything's different. But this is where I think, again, there have been a lot of opportunities there for finance professionals in Saudi. Some have taken them, and they're quite happy with that. Some have been hesitant, and some haven't considered it. The ones that have been hesitant, I honestly think if you really want to spend, you know, 2 to 3 years in a place that's growing very fast, take the plunge. I mean, you will learn something. It's at a pioneering stage still. Okay, if you think about the UAE, Dubai, 20 years ago, it was similar. Right. Yeah. I mean, it was an early stage. It was a pioneering stage, and then the what you're exposed to in those early stages puts you in a really good, you know, gives you a really good base for you to move forward, get some really, really good experience. It could be an acquisition, it could be, you know, part of an M&A, it could be a startup company, it could be a company that wants to move into Riyadh and they were in Jeddah, whatever it might be. These are really important aspects and journeys of an organization. And if you're part of that as a finance executive, finance leader, you will take those learnings and move with them.
Yeah, it's not stagnant anyway.
Exactly.
That's one thing I'd say. There's a lot more mature markets in the world where these things will definitely not be happening.
And the region's growing very fast. I mean, we're lucky, and I think today, if you look at the world, the world today, the two markets that are growing really well are the US and the Middle East. Europe is not in good shape. Asia has its issues, especially in China and the like. So I think if you're in the Middle East, you're in a lucky place. If you're in Saudi, it's growing. You're going to be exposed to some interesting work. You're going to be hopefully well paid. You're going to gain some amazing experience. So I encourage those who are considering roles in Saudi to take them. This year has been a little bit slower, I understand, because, again, a lot's happened. A lot of new roles have opened up. They've been filled. And I think, there'll be a second phase, a third phase, and these sorts of things. So be prepared if you think you want to go to a new frontier.
You can't win the lotto unless you have a ticket.
Correct.
Simple as that. So
correct.
I think then, look, final question.
Yep.
What's the one piece of advice you give to our listeners?
Keep pushing boundaries. Never be happy with where you are, the skill set you've got, and just keep pushing boundaries. But at the same time, never let go of what got you there, the principles that got you there, whatever those principles might be, those foundations. Keep close to those foundations. Do not let go of those foundations. And again, maybe I'm talking a little bit general here, but that's just the way
it's pushing.
Exactly.
It's pushing yourself.
Exactly. Push yourself, but keep those strong foundations. Whether it's hard work ethic, ethics and governance, be honest, give an honest day's work. At the same time, be honest to yourself about it. And these sorts of principles. If you do that, then honestly, things will take care of themselves.
It'll compound and it'll all take
Exactly. These are the characteristics that executives, leaders look for when it comes to finance leadership. They want people who are hardworking, who are honest, who are you've got the purse strings. Ultimately, attitude. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you've got the purse strings, you need to guard those purse strings. And provide the advice and support that the organisation, the team, the audit firm, whatever it might be, needs to be successful. So that's my final word of advice.
Thank you, sir. Well, we'll close with just a few quick-fire questions so listeners can get to know Ralph a little bit better. So if you could have a conversation with your younger self, what would you say?
Wow, I don't know.
That long ago?
No, I'm just trying to think. I never. Is finance the real path? Is there another path you could have taken? Because I was always thinking to myself, I started as a trainee accountant, so I never really thought of another.
What would you if you could have been at something else, or was there anything when you were younger you would like to be?
I have a good friend who's a diamond trader.
Well, that'd be interesting anyway.
A very close friend who's a diamond trader. So I thought maybe, just a recent, imagine I took a different path and became a diamond trader.
And then if you could live anywhere in the world, obviously you're a very well-traveled man, where would you live if you could live anywhere just for a year?
I'd live in Bali.
Ralph, thank you.
Thank you, Conor.
That was great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for
I'm sure we probably have something to talk about in a year's time. Anyway.
Yeah, let's keep it going. We can have a series just us.
series, Ralph. So look, from our side, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast and see you on our next episode.